Hey guys, how's it going? I realized that as I am out on vacation this week that I may have missed an opportunity to come on and talk to you all, and I don't want to do that. So I am filming right now on my camera like usual from my sister's apartment, and she is a little bit more of an adult than I am, so she has lovely artwork and that kind of a thing. So we have kind of a cool setting for today, though I'm kind of like higher right now. You may have noticed that I have like a little bit of mehendi on my hands. It's like I don't know how traditional any of this is. I asked specifically not to have my fingers done because I wanted to drink my beer. So so I only had I don't know. I went pretty sparse on the mehendi, but I think this design is pretty. I don't know. What do you guys think? So anyway, so many things to talk about, to be honest, guys. One thing, so I'm kind of taking a two-parter vacation, and the first part was sort of family-oriented. My sister wanted an opportunity for her fiance's family and my family to spend some time together, I guess, before she gets married, and that was pretty interesting. I like their family a lot. Parts of this stuff is just stressful for me. One thing I did like in the vein of body positivity is that his family is less petite than my family. One reason is because so their family is the kids in the family are both men, and they're both they have a big stature, basically. They're 6'2", 6'3". They're just larger people genetically. So I always like being around larger people because then it makes me feel less self-conscious about being bigger than everybody else in the room, because I'm definitely bigger than everyone in my family. I think that my brother and I are maybe similar weights. We're not that far off. I think my brother is 5'10" or 5'11". I'm not sure. He might be 5'10", so he's definitely taller than me. I'm 5'6", but I think I might weigh a little bit more than him. He's the person in my family who, when we're standing next to each other, you're not wow, that's a giant person standing next to the next person, but it looks like that with everyone else in my family. Everyone else in my family, my sister, I'm probably around 60 pounds heavier than her, or more than that, maybe 70 pounds heavier than her, and my parents, I'm probably around 50 pounds heavier than them. So it is always kind of a thing where when we're all together, I am very much aware of my size, and it's just because I am literally the biggest person in the room. And I remember, all this stuff is so relative, because I was thinking about recently, as my sister has been trying to tap into her Indian side of her identity. My dad is Indian. He grew up in a village in India, which we've been to a few times. And I was thinking this weekend a few times, about how all of this stuff is so relative. In my dad's village, when I've visited, I think in a lot of ways, I'm just different than somebody that they would have ever seen before. But one of those ways definitely has to do with size. And it's commented on a lot, and I think that it's, in this oh, you must be so healthy. That's what they say to indicate that you're overweight. But Um, I think for me, at the size I am at, and I think I was a little bit lighter. I think I was maybe like 10 pounds lighter the last time I was in India. It's just that they've never seen somebody this big before. So it's like, how does this person even exist? Like, why would this happen? And I think, there are questions about, like, my cousins were asking me basically, like, why, like, essentially, like, how it could happen that I have gotten as big as I've gotten. And so, like, that's something I was thinking about, that it's all relative. Like, those questions, when you hear those questions, you're like, oh my God, I feel like a monster. Like, I'm so giant, and like, I'm so giant that my physical form is hard for my blood relatives to comprehend, that kind of a thing. Like, that's sort of mind-blowing to me. But it is all relative. And it's not like, like India's not aware that fat people exist or something. My dad grew up in a very small village, and so parts of his family have left the village. Like, his family that lives in Kolkata are more acquainted with people who are differently sized, or just more diversity in general. I think in the village, for the folks who are still in the village, I think and who have not left the village, I think that is more of kind of where I get the sentiment from folks that there's confusion around my life story. Like what were the steps that I had to take to become the size that I am? Like, just actual curiosity about that. And I don't know, so I was just thinking about that. And I didn't explain it properly. I was really embarrassed when I was there and I got these questions. I didn't really know how to answer them. Kind of something where I just laugh it off and I'm like, oh, well, Americans, like, we don't always eat the best. Or I would say, like, oh, like, I don't always cook for myself, or I don't know. It's just like hard to explain it. It's hard to explain it. And definitely I wouldn't, ever try to explain, like, oh, like from the age of 11, I developed disordered eating patterns, because that's, like, I don't know. Like it just feels too far out in left field to try to explain that. But maybe it's possible. Who knows? So the past few days have been interesting to me because I've thought a bit about what it means to be Indian in America and what it means to be half white. And I wore this dress for these pictures, that this lehenga that is so beautiful and that I hadn't put on since high school. It might have even been before high school, because what really sticks out in my mind around this dress is when, I think it was in middle school, when we would have like International Student Day or something, and then I would wear that outfit to show, like, oh, like, this is something from my parents' home country. And I think it was even before high school. So yeah, just some thoughts around what being Indian really means to me. I do volunteer work in the Asian American communities in Chicago to kind of like increase civic engagement and to to foster conversations around reproductive health and reproductive justice and mental health. I think those are some areas in which the community has some challenges, some additional barriers, and some of those are language-based, but a lot of things are cultural. And of course, we talk about the Asian American community as one community. It's kind of like strategic essentialism. It's because it's the way to get the most bang for our buck, essentially. Like, obviously, we are an extremely diverse community because it includes all of Asia, right? I think the Middle East isn't typically included in that category, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it is like all the South Asian American countries, the Asian Pacific Islander country, like the Philippines, like those countries, and then East Asia. So yeah, so south, southwest, and then or south, southeast. Wait. South, southeast, and then East Asia. And so I think because it's so diverse, like I for some reason I feel like I tend to think more about my identity as an Asian American and how that fits into like shaping American policy or something, and I'm not actually thinking about things around cultural heritage or around my identity, I guess, just as an Indian person. And all these things, like as an Indian person who is also Bengali, who doesn't speak the language, who only speaks, so I was to say American, Jesus Christ, who only speaks English, of an Indian woman who also identifies as bi, as an Indian woman who also identifies as fat, like all those things, like I'm not sure how often I put like Indian first. I think I put biracial or multiracial or mixed first. I think I identify strongly as a woman of color, but I don't know. I also don't exactly know how to celebrate my heritage because I'm not religious. My dad was raised Muslim, but he became an atheist before we were born. So while I think many of the cultural values that I have instilled in me and that I grew up with come from Islam, I am not Muslim and I'm not Hindu. So to like take part in some of the religious practices or holidays, it's kind of complicated for me. Like I'm not exactly sure where I fit in. The longer I've been in Chicago, the more people that I meet who are like me. There are a lot of us out there. And if you're like me, like, let me know, because when you fall at the intersection of a lot of categories, I think finding a sense of belonging is difficult, and maybe you get used to feeling like it's not possible. I think maybe you get used to feeling like, you've gotten the kind of the best that you can get, and you need to make space for others. And you spend a lot of time tiptoeing and making space. At least that's been my angle. I think different people tackle this kind of interesting set of nuanced identities differently. But I don't know. So I've just been thinking about it, and I think I have a lot more thinking to do. But yeah, if anything that I've said here strikes a chord with you, I'd be really interested in starting discussions around it, because, you know, I'm almost 30 and I'm still very much so figuring out who I am. And it's always, always evolving. And where I want to make my impact and where I feel like I can best insert myself in certain conversations and be an agent of change is always evolving as well. It's like very fascinating to me. So with that said, thanks for hanging out and listening to me chat, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye, y'all.